Maricopa County eviction rates surge could break an October record. So how high did they go? Well, they went up to 7,809 evictions in September. The record was 7,902, which is set in August of 2005, before the great financial tumble. I found that kind of interesting. But then I went and I looked up from Maricopa County some actual numbers, and usually most of the things that you get in state and county are pretty lagging. This shows December of 22. That's as far out as they go on evictions, but it does show where we were pre-pandemic here, right? Just slightly above 5,000 evictions. But in the details, it said pre-pandemic monthly eviction filings were around 5,000, seen in gray on the chart above. The blue bars show how evictions were affected by the pandemic, and the eviction moratoriums in place at the time. The major dip was in April, May of 2020, but evictions started to increase again shortly thereafter and continued to increase, reaching a peak of 6,500 in August of 2022. But when I get into the details of the article, they go on to say that this is a plot map here showing where all the evictions take place. Looks like 1 million of them. So the cost burden households are households paying 30% or more of their household income on housing costs. So anything in yellow there. But what the article goes on to say is the majority of the evictions are taking place in the lower income areas, with the majority being apartments. So I don't see that affecting single family housing inventory, even though that's a very high number. Do you? I think we still have a lag on your end. Something's going on. So you're not frozen, but you're not. Yeah, there's a little bit of a delay.
I think that thing was fixed.
Yeah. Are you hearing me okay on your end?
Yep, I am. Yep.
Okay, but it's just delayed for some reason. So I'm going to have to figure that out on my end to see what's going on. The other interesting thing I saw that I ran into, Pat, here's an article that says mortgage rates hit 23-year high and home prices show few signs of cooling, but Redfin says all hope is not lost. Well, what are they talking about? And basically, they just came out and said, well, inventory is starting to increase, and if interest rates come down, then you'll have more choices. But hey, guess what? Prices are remaining flat. Now, inventory is kind of coming up. We're up to 14,000 today, which is interesting. But the inventory increase that he alluded to as far as new listings, I only saw it for a brief period in my 7-day moving average. It's starting to come back down, and I expect it to stay that way through the holidays. So I don't expect us to see a lot of new listings coming up. And then not finally, but here's the list price per square foot. Gone up just a little bit, went down, went up. So you can see that list pricing is not falling off the face of the earth yet. And here's our annual median sales price. So if we go back to last October, which would be, let's see, here's October 22. We had a median sales price of $450, and today we are at $426. So we did come down, but now we've leveled out. We are seeing what's that? Go ahead.
Well, real quick, that median price. The median price obviously is just 50% of the homes sell below that, and 50% sell above that. So obviously, that's once again, it's indication maybe that's something to do on the higher end too.
Could be. These numbers have not kissed yet. When they cross, this is when you get the price reductions, right? When demand is lower than supply, and they're not there yet on the index. I'm not seeing it on my 7-day moving average yet. We're still seeing the percent of closings with seller paid concessions now roughly at 40%, with an average median concession of $8,300. And so that's pretty hefty. So sellers are definitely making concessions to buyers now, and buyers are asking for them. The other thing I wanted to point out for sellers is if you get a lowball offer, don't be insulted. Treat that as an open invitation to negotiate. This is where a lot of sellers go wrong. Is that an offer is an offer, right? So you got an offer on your home. You may not like it. It may not even be anywhere near what you want, but it's in your hand. The real estate agents are communicating. Start talking, negotiate. You never know where they end up. I've written offers for investors that were just horrendous. And then we end up coming around and offering them their full asking price. So you just never know. And when the agent asked me once, they said, why did the offer come in so low? And I said, well, sometimes people accept them. What can I tell you? So
everything in real estate is negotiable. And I mean, you're right, though. I think, Jim and Jane Smith are looking to buy a house for $450 that's listed for $450. I mean, didn't you always say it's like you're probably not going to get that price right away? People aren't going to, unless if you've got a house for $450, people know that we're in slower times. They're probably going to offer you $435 or $440, even though they could probably afford $450.
Yeah. That nobody's writing full price offers now. Nobody. They haven't been for a year, unless all of a sudden another offer swoops in, then the whole game changes. But talking to a real estate agent I know up in Tacoma, Washington, we had a conversation this week, and the thing that we were talking about was that a lot of sellers out there right now, they're kind of in tune as to what's going on, but not really. They base their pricing on the neighbor's house that just sold last month. Well, we've gone down 1.2%. So last month was written 30 to 45 days ago. That doesn't help you. It could be the exact same house. It sold for 500, and he had one where she wanted to price it at 525. I think they got 485 for it. But the house that sold next door, that's not your comp now. That's if we're in a declining market, even if it's a slight declining market, and the few buyers we have out there, you better be lower than the one that just sold. And you need to come to terms that Zillow number that you saw that you're really happy with may not materialize. So, and the driving force of that is rate. So I'm going to put your rate chart up here, Pat. And what kind of week do we have? I thought it was kind of quiet.
Really wasn't.
We had to show how much attention I pay.
No, I mean, beaten up by the CPI numbers. They came in a little hotter. The expectations that, it was like 1/10 off. But that's why you're the real estate expert and I'm the interest rate expert, right?
Yeah, that's right. Just stay in my sandbox.
Stay in your lane there, buddy. Stay in your lane, okay? No, but I mean, this is pulling back. This is, once again, this is last 6 months chart, pulling it back the last year. These are rates. I mean, obviously, since, April, we've been really kind of just on this upward swing with rates. But today we got beaten up a couple days ago with the CPI, but we made a little comeback the last couple of days. Today, the 6% coupon was up 23 basis points. The 10-year Treasury was it closed at 4.61. It's been, we're kind of reaching this. It seems like we're reaching this short-term peak. I mean, the Feds, you've seen it. We were talking about it, that there seems like there's the Federal Reserve presidents are kind of coming out, a handful of them or more than a handful of them are coming out and saying, hey, our work is kind of done. We're going to probably keep rates elevated here. The consensus it seems to be is that, the Feds, with what you got going on with oil and the war, just generally speaking, I don't see them cranking up rates even further just to cause more turmoil. Because then all of a sudden you get rates, you get this banking situation. I don't think they, they don't want to cause. They just want to keep it where it's at right now. And it just seems to me that we're kind of toward. My gut feeling is we're getting this capitulation, and at least in the mortgage business, people are slow. Real estate, agents are slow. People are just kind of waiting there. We're waiting for something to bust, and my gut says something's going to bust here. It might be 3 to 5, 6 months out, but things will soften up in real estate prices. But if rates come down, and I wanted to just rattle people's cages a little bit. Can I go into what I was talking about earlier?
Sure. It's your show.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, thank you. Even though it is Rick, the Rick McHone, the Mick report, I guess.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
this is
Get the
something I
name
just
right.
want to get. Huh?
I said, get the name right.
Yeah, McHone. But this I just want to throw this out for food for thought for people, and this is kind of what I just kind of put together. This is nothing, this is not going to get me a Nobel Prize for economy, being an economist, but people are waiting for rates to drop. We've heard that, we've seen it, I hear it, I feel it. I talk to other mortgage people, talk to real estate people, but I just kind of put together some numbers, and this is just food for thought. I'm not advocating buying, but if you are, you got a 400. I'm going to put the scenario together. $450,000 house, 5% down. Let's say you put $25,000 down just to make round numbers even. Right now, the rate, let's say you call it 7.75. Your principal and interest would be $3,043. Now, a lot of people are saying, I'm going to wait till rates get in the high fives. There's that one study that says 70% of the people are waiting to rates get to 5.5 before they buy. Let's just say rates go from 7.75 down to 5.75. That would be a difference in payment of $548 a month. Okay. So I took that 548 and multiplied by 12 months. So let's say you're in this rate at 7.75 for 12 months. So over that 12 months, it would be a $6,576 basically payment difference between 7.75 and 5.75.
Gotcha.
Now, if you
I said, I got you.
Yep, $6,500. Expand that even now to 18 months. $548 times 18 months. That's $9,874. If you bought right now. Let's say rates go down to 5.75. Based on yours and my experience the last couple of years, what do you think is going to happen with buyers? Are they going to come out of the woodwork? Are we going to see more bidding?
We get down. We already know that if you get near 5.5, that because we saw that last July.
Yeah.
So when they get to 5.5, they come back.
Yeah. And I'm not going to argue with people saying, oh, this is a crash. We're going to wait. I'm just looking at what we saw in the last couple of years and trying to extrapolate that, try to give people some type of game plan. But if rates were to drop down to 5.75, I'm just kind of guessing a $450,000 house is probably going to get a couple of bidding wars, maybe bid up $15,000 or $20,000 more. So all of a sudden you got a $450,000 house that might be bid up to $465,000, $470,000, right? There's, let's say, a $20,000 difference. So what do you want to do? Do you want to buy now at 7.75? Like you said, I gave you the what it costs. The cost between 7.75 and 5.75 is $6,500 over 12 months. Over 18 months, it's $9,800. Do you want to buy now, or do you want to wait till rates get to 5.5, 5.75, where you're spending 10, 15, 20,000 more for that house? I just want to get people's thought process, kind of kick them off a little bit and get them thinking. Because right now with higher rates, we're seeing seller concessions of 8, 9, 10, 11 grand. That $10,000, $11,000 will allow you to do a 2-1 buy down to get your rate into the high fives anyway. So that I'm really starting to really believe that's my scenario that I'm throwing out there that I think,
Yeah, well, it's an example of a scenario that, that you're proposing that says, what if prices stay the same until such time that the interest rates go down, and then we know the prices will go up. Then here's one scenario, because a couple things will happen to you at that point. One, the prices will go up if there's more demand, and two, you will lose those seller concessions because they don't have to do that. Now, on the flip side, if you're waiting, and between now and that period where maybe rates get down to 5 something, you're sitting there at 7.5% for a prolonged period of time, it's also highly possible that the price of the home goes down. So when comparing the two options, that's something to consider as well. So can I wait? And this is what people are trying to do, Pat. They're trying to say, well, I'm going to wait for the prices of the homes to come down because I clearly see that that's what's happening. I mean, we have one right here that says evictions rates, demand are back to the early 2000s. What's next? There is a pool of buyers out there waiting. And so I think you need to crunch numbers on both sides. If I'm hearing what you're saying, it's like there's that possibility that rates go down is real. It could happen. If it does, then put a pencil to it. And the other thing is, what is your opportunity cost? I mean, is a 2-1 buy down worth it? Well, it is if the seller's buying it. And right now they are. But then the argument that I get the people push back on and go, oh, don't get a 2-1 buy down. If they're willing to contribute 10 grand for that, then just have them reduce the price by 10K. What is your feeling about that?
Well, you get a bucket of money, 10 grand. Okay, somebody just gave you 10 grand. What do you want to do? Reduce the price or reduce your rate? The numbers basically show that reducing the rate is going to help you a hell of a lot better in the short term than, by reduce it by 10 grand. So bird and feather, bird in hand is better than two in the bush right now. I'm just trying to pick out a scenario because people are like, wait, you see these scenarios where people are, I'm going to wait for rates or, values. Values are probably going to soften up. Obviously, we see rates go up even further, but I'm just trying to get people off that one step that they've been thinking about, just to kind of, just like I said, food for thought. That's all I'm throwing out there.
Yeah. And Lewis here, get back to his comment. Evictions rates and demands are back to the early 2000s. What next? The thing is, we don't know. I mean, look how much this last weekend changed. The evictions, evictions, part of the problem with the evictions was pent up. You couldn't evict anybody for a long time. The courts got backed up. So some of this is just backlog. But if you can see when you went back and look at that chart that the evictions that we've got now are they're a little higher than pre-pandemic levels. And pre-pandemic levels, it's kind of like a normal percentage of evictions is about 2 to 3% anyway. So we might be 4% now. So it's not an alarming number on a percentage basis. It's whenever you hit some kind of a record, it's new. The other thing that was also in that article was, keep in mind, the reason that it's new is there's a hell of a lot more people living here now and renting. And then how is this going to affect rental prices? Well, I think what's going to affect rental prices more, I drove up to State Farm Stadium yesterday and went to the RV show, which don't go, it's a waste of time. And I couldn't believe going up to 202 and then getting out to Westgate, how many new apartments are being built. And we see it in the multifamily building permits. They're everywhere. That's what's going to pull rental prices down. Because vacancy rate now is still only 5%, Pat. That's a low number.
Yeah.
And we have comment, sounds like this week or two is the crash. How so? Explain that to me. This crash. So as you're looking at this, you had Barry Habib talking about how the government tracks CPI, and he kind of poked holes in a few things.
Yeah, I mean his number, he just, I'm not getting, he goes into it for, obviously 15 or 20 minutes, but he just says how the CPI is just so skewed. There's certain numbers out there. The lodging, there's a lot. Let's see, the lodging away from home consists of, it's like 1.5%. He said the shelter is like 43% of the core, rent 9.5%. But he was talking about how volatile lodging away from home is. This number is very volatile, and it's been coming down. And he actually, let me see, 622 the time frame here. I'm just trying to pull up the same. He's saying that shelter costs they have been lagging, and here's where they're at right now. And this is kind of what the feds are looking at right up in here. So they are lagging. He thinks, we had a bump in the CPI here last week. Yeah, obviously gasoline, had a big doing with that. I mean, so he's poking holes in the fact that, these numbers, there just seem to be, there's something behind the numbers that he says don't really add up. It just feels like there's something. As a matter of fact, he said the CPI, look at here, used cars, 3.4% in the core, motor vehicles is 3.5. He said health insurance these were the year-over-year numbers that he said. Motor vehicles up 19%. He said health insurance was down 37%. And he's like, I don't know whose
In
health
what
insurance has
world?
dropped 30. Yeah. So, he was poking the bear as far as, there's so much skewy as far as these numbers now. But he just feels like, we're going to be we're not too far from things kind of settling down in the CPI. And really the real CPI is they're getting a lot closer toward their target. And I still think their target of 2% is still, that is so antiquated. It's beyond belief. That was a number that was made up, like I said, 20, 25 years ago. So I think they're going to come to a point where like, okay, we're around the high twos. We're good enough.
Well, there's a lot more that goes into the Fed actions as well, besides just you and me and housing. I mean, there's a lot of the interest on the debt could force them to make changes as well. This is we've never been here before, folks. We haven't, we're always trying to find a year to compare it to. We've never had this much money injected into the system at all. We've never had to pull back as hard as we are now, and have a war on two fronts, and inventory still remain low. Remember, normal inventory for Arizona is about 27,000, and we're sitting at 14. So, DeFrank here says, well, if he's fishing for hypothetical, it means there's no action out there. I don't think Pat's fishing for hypotheticals. I think he's just saying, when you're considering scenarios, here's one thing to look at, because we don't know what's going to happen. So you have more options. We're feeling a lot of negativity without numbers, to be honest with you, on things that I see on YouTube. I saw a video was forwarded to me yesterday. I called it absurd. How Phoenix was just falling apart. And there was not one number on inventory shared, not one stat, not one vacancy rate, not one supply versus demand, nothing, just a thought and a feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of have to be careful with that. And, Terry says homes are overpriced by 50%. It's going to be bad. High prices is not like a car, Terry. Just because they went up fast doesn't mean they're going to crash. Look how high prices have been in San Diego and San Francisco, and for how long?
Yeah, they've been there forever.
Yeah, we could be in this high price mode for quite some time. I don't know. I'm not predicting it. Lewis asked a good question. How many evictions came from rentals versus apartment rentals? Well, according to the county, the majority of them are apartments in low-income areas. That's the majority of them. But keep in mind, the number's not really as skewed on a percentage basis as high as that title makes it look.
Mm-hmm. But I'm not, like in terms of I'm not fishing for hypotheticals. I'm just trying to give somebody a little food for thought to kind of get like, oh, I never thought about that. That's all. Yeah, there's very little action out there. People are sitting on their hands, which is fine. I've got, but I'm just trying to get people. Sometimes you have to look at a picture a little bit different ways,
Well, I think you have to look at the entire market too and understand what's happening out there that maybe can turn into an opportunity. So yeah, prices are out of reach. Affordability is really, really in trouble. I think I read that incomes would have to go up 53%. Housing has to come down 35%, or a combination thereof, to hit an affordability target. Doesn't mean that that's going to happen right away, or maybe it's not going to happen for a generation. But it's also nice to know, well, how many people are offering concessions to buyers? How many homes are going over list price right now? How many sales do we have on a week compared to how many new listings come up? Those are the numbers that you need to stay on top of, not I wish and I hope.
Yeah.
Seeing
and I'm
an
thinking
awful lot
that I'm thinking something's going to happen. I mean, like I said, I'm just trying to figure out. Yeah. There's a lot of, a lot of interesting YouTube channels out there. A lot of just stuff out there. It's just amazing.
Entertaining. I don't mind different opinions. I really don't. I just want opinions with some numbers and some meat behind it. Please. Just don't say this particular video took a look at one house in Phoenix, but probably the ugliest house you ever seen in your life. And they reduced their price by $5. Oh, These guys are trying all kinds of crazy things out there. And I'm like, really? What does that even tell you? One house in actually kind of a poor section of our valley, and they reduced the price by $5, and guess what? It hasn't sold. So therefore, the Phoenix market is collapsing. Please give me some meat.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
So, the problem, see one deal, that's total inversion. Then you'll really know. I think, look, there's a lot coming at us on a daily basis and everything. And real estate moves slow. So, we've certainly got our time. We're going to be having this conversation about inventory and interest rates being where they're at and affordability being hard 6 months from now.
Mm-hmm.
Unless there's a major banking crisis. And so far, even Jamie Dimon said, wow, the banks are doing pretty good. But in our market, I like to look at, and this is the one that I track all the time, and I really can't stress this enough, that as the gap between sales and new listings grows, that puts more downward pricing pressure out there. So I'm actually surprised right now to see that new list pricing has not come down. It should. We're at 65% here. So it should be coming down. But that gets back to the very first thing I said at the beginning of this segment. Sellers haven't quite caught on yet that the home down the street, you're going to have to accept the fact that it's sold for more than what you're going to get. And there's a lot of stuff out there that you can look at. And my buddy here running at Altitude, I know what channel I'm referring to. Cherry picking one bad listing does not represent the entire market. It made my hair hurt. What little hair I had left. It's your boy, old Rainbows and Sunshine. Yeah, it's just, that was painful. But those two numbers I just showed you, new listings and sales, are going to continue to go down the closer we get to Christmas. And it's going to be interesting because we are at record low pending and contracts right now at 2,200 every 7 days. That's as low as it gets. So we sit back and go, okay, how much lower can it get? So
it just, once again, it just feels like, we've been floating here the last, this whole year and a half. It's been kind of a grind, but it doesn't feel like 07, 08, 09. I was there, and it seems like you got this whole segment that's content at 3.5% in their house, and they're like, all right. It's just
yeah, that number is staggering. I think you pointed out something the other day too when I showed that chart, and that is that if we turn that chart upside down, that's what 2008 looked like.
Yeah.
The majority of people were sitting at this high note that was adjustable. Now we've got the majority of homeowners sitting on this low rate that's not going to change. We're not Canada.
Yeah. I mean, that chart was totally flipped around 07, 08, where you bought a house at 5.5%, but in 2 years it was going to flip to like 8.5%, 9% because you had a 2 year or 3 year adjustable arm, and with a prepayment penalty on it, and it's just totally different this time around. So that's why I befuddled. I mean, it's just been an interesting market.
I drove down the 202 on south of Elliott on the west side of the valley, the new 202. There was this huge build to rent community where they're all just socked in there. And from the road, I mean, it was the ugliest sight you've ever seen, but I couldn't believe how many homes were in there. I was like, what? Just it was unbelievable. So, so rent relief could happen, but rent relief isn't going to happen as long as the vacancy rate's 5%. It's got to go up to 9%. So, and even at 9%, that's not going to drive a lot of landlords out. So you'll know we're getting rent relief when you start seeing first month free on the side of an apartment complex.
Yeah.
That's your first sign. Life in Phoenix says we are at 3.5% have affordable housing. Those that got in then do. Millennials right now trying to get in. I had a video come out last night, talked about how hard it is, that there's no denying it's tough. And for some people, impossible. One poor viewer wrote, I make $70,000 a year. I had to move in with my dad. I give up. So I feel the pain. I don't like it.
Yeah, no, I do
wish
too.
it,
I mean,
I wish it wasn't the way it is.
yeah, I know. But I'm amazed though over the last couple of years how many people I've done loans for that have, car payments of six, seven, eight, $900,000. Um, that kind of blows my mind too.
Well, and the CPI tracks the price of used cars, but they're not really tracking the payment of used cars, which has gone up.
Oh yeah, yeah,
So,
tremendously.
so here's one here. Bunch of apartments in Tempe are offering 4 to 8 weeks free if you rent tomorrow. Um, you know, that's Tempe befuddles me. How you get all these luxurious apartments next to a college. I mean, most of my friends in college said they were eating top ramen for dinner, and they weren't living in, they had 6 of them to a place. I've seen many homes flipping from sale to rent, then back to sale or staying for rent. Mostly the houses on sale 90 days or more. How does this impact the inventory data? I don't know. I mean, I just see days on market and how many homes are out there. There's all kinds of inside of that, a lot of noise. Would you agree?
Oh, definitely, definitely.
You can data yourself to death in there. And I look at a lot of data too, because I look at um, um, Altos Research. There's actually a great website for realtors called BAM. He's on every morning at 6:30 Arizona time. Gives us a lot of resources to look at, a lot of food for thought nationally. Terry says, "The last agent, please turn off the alarms. Turn off." So it's. Oh, here's my buddy. Bye, bye, bye. Noel, you don't like realtors. I get it. We're just salespeople. I think you missed the episode where I said I was advising my son to wait. Go back and look at that one. Telling him to wait. Tempe is wild. CPI flexing contracts. I think the deals will be had in the months to come. Some sellers still need to sell. Rentals are pretty stable here in Tempe. It's interesting. I think we still have a lot of people moving here, but there's definitely going to be, I think, life in Phoenix, an oversaturation of rentals just based on multifamily permits.
Yeah.
And
But once
yeah,
again, I think
Terry says, look at Armless. So.
the freak is trying to get make this political.
Yeah, the freak. I'm gonna leave that one lying there. So trust me, if we, I'd have to start a whole new channel.
Yeah.
And in fact, it's funny. I was just telling you about BAM, right? They had a show out yesterday that was geared towards realtors. Should you get political on your channel? I didn't have to watch it to know what the answer was. No, don't. I mean, I made that one water video where I was talking about what will the new governors do, and I compared Katie Hobbs' plan to Kari Lake, and all I did was read what they had on their websites, and it opened up a flood of criticism. They were accusing me of being for Kari Lake, and what a creep she was, and Katie. I was like, I mean, I went back and watched it 3 times. Like, where did I say that? And I think the only negative thing I said was that Katie Hobbs said she was going to look at the situation with a committee. And I said, now I've been in the corporate world long enough to where I'm not a big fan of committees, but maybe she'll figure something out. So far, I'm going to tell you, I like what she's doing with the water. She's been on top of it. And so maybe she's got a great committee. And that's the only negative thing that I said, but man, they beat me up.
Yeah.
You and the girls are great realtors, Rick, and I agree. The rental saturation is here. Armless is whoa. The Armless, that's our local MLS. When you come to look at rental statistics on there, it's pretty anemic, wouldn't you say? You can't find anything on it because the majority of people putting out a rental, they don't use the MLS.
No.
They go to apartments.com or Zillow or realtor.com. And there's no reason to go on the MLS. You can find plenty of renters and avoid that. And the MLS can be kind of sticky.
Yep, for sure.
Well, Pat, is there any news next week that we need to keep an eye out for?
I think, what did they say? Next week we got, nothing really. It's retail sales. Well, retail sales. Fed's beige book. That's kind of always kind of interesting. Thursday is like initial jobless claims, existing homes, nothing crazy. So I don't know if the feds, you might have some more Fed speak, but nothing too crazy. I mean, obviously there's been a flight. There's been somewhat, the bonds have been kind of interesting with there's been this a small flight to safety in the bond market, but not crazy rush to bonds because there's always this hesitancy of what the hell is going to go on with they can raise them a little bit further. So nothing too crazy, just same old, same old. We'll probably be talking the same way the next couple months, but just my gut feels like the more we move along, something's going to eventually start. The trend's going to start to move the other way. I don't know. It just feels like the Feds are kind of, they've done their piece. They're going to sit there with the accelerator, and then who knows?
Get this question a lot too, Pat. What percentage of the inventory is occupied? There seems to be a focus on that now, kind of like shadow inventory. That 50% of the homes that are listed are empty. When you go in and you look, it's across the board. It's like single wide trailers, park models that are for sale, but Arizona has a higher percentage of empty homes for sale than most other states and more second homes because of snowbirds. So I don't honestly have a number that I could call average. I just don't know. It's really hard to see if the 50% number is something to worry about because you've only got 14,000 listings. So if 7,000 of them are vacant, so what? So, and it could be some of them are Airbnbs, but I don't think so. I went through and just tried to scroll through and boy, a lot of these vacant ones are just really at the low end of the spectrum, the price range. So it was, but it's kind of hard to scroll through like 900 homes and try to get to a conclusion. So I got tired of trying to dissect that little animal out there. So, but Pat, well, listen, you have a super weekend and we will see you again next week.
All right, buddy.
Take care.
All right.